Broadcast. Hello, 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 everyone. This is Tanika Steens. Here I am, and this is Mind Your Business. And today I have a special guest, and give me just a second because things are deciding to run really slow right now. Why? I don't know. But that's just how life goes sometimes. But, anyways, it is Monday. It's a new day. It's beautiful outside. It's supposed to be spring, but I'm seeing snow. I don't know about you where you are, but there is definitely snow around here. So, give me just a second. And da-da-da-da. Technology, gotta love it. Thing if we were we wouldn't get fired, would we? We just updated.
We do the next cut.
And oh, this is hilarious. Okay, here we go. I'm pulling this up, and my guest today is Michael Hines. He's already cycled through a lifetime worth of jobs. Haven't we all been there and done that? I know I have. He is a banker, a painter, and a therapist. I was going to say a candlestick maker, but it's not on here. These days, business
Although,
owners, creative executives, and professionals from all avenues seek out his coaching because of its power and simplicity. Michael is the author with Linda Hulme, Lee, and we're going to ask him if I got that right, of The Misguided Mind, Unleash Your God-Given Genius at Work and at Home. And he lives in Toronto. Well, today he's my guest. Welcome, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Sanika. It was a great intro. And yes, you got Linda's name right. We're doing great.
Good. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out to join me this morning. What time is it in Toronto?
Yeah, so it's just a little after 11.
Okay, so we're
And
on the same time frame. So we'll jump right in. I know I read a little bit about your bio, but that tells me a little bit about who you are. So why don't you
yep.
tell us who you are, what you do, and why you do it?
Well, like I said, these days I'm an executive coach. And, the truth is, certainly executives are attracted to my work, but just about anybody who's come to a major crossroads in their life seems to be ignoring that word executive and saying, hey, things are upside down. I've got to find out what's really going on. I've got to find my core values and reorient my life and basically write a new story. So my book is one of those books where it's inspirational. It takes you a little bit on a journey, and it's all about story. I happen to use mythology, but people come from whatever background, and a lot of times, I was raised Catholic, so a Christian community comes and people come to me and say, like, does God factor into this for me? And it's like, yeah, and it's about your alignment with it, and it's like, but I've got to make a living. I've got to get some work. It's like, well, I've done that a lot of different ways. Let's talk about where you're at. And so people kind of tell me where they are right here, right now on their journey. And I think what kind of happens is I've had some real hardships, like one was major and a couple more minor ones, loss of job and things like that. There's a real tragedy, and that's in the book. And it changes you as a person. It gives you the opportunity to, do you have any faith? Were you raised in it? Do you need to find something? Is it going to be a philosophy? Because some people don't go that way. What language do you actually speak, and how are you going to orient the rest of your life? And so that's why, these days I'm going and starting right now, going forward. And that's the world of coaching. Like, what is the best possible way you can be? I mean, it's also the world of ministry, but I'm over here as a coach, as you may well know, Danica. So that's maybe a starter, and I know we're going to go deeper, but that should kind of keep people nice and confused and still not know who I am. Let's keep going.
All right, all right. Now, I believe that coaching is the best thing that can happen to someone, truthfully. And a lot of times we don't know. My grandbaby is here today, so
So they might be in the show too. This is like, see, this is
Yeah.
where you are right here,
And,
right
and
now.
my 7-year old might pop up and say hi, but she's still sleeping right now because she went to bed late. So that's a good thing. We're still on spring break. But I believe coaching is one of the best things that we can have. A lot of times we don't know that we need a coach and someone that can come alongside and encourage us and uplift us and push us a little bit. I think people get the wrong idea of what a coach is versus a therapist. Would you like to share with us a little bit more about coaching and how you help people and the difference between coaching and therapy?
Yeah, so I mean, up here, and it varies state to state, but we've got this kind of definition of serious mental or emotional illness is the realm of psychotherapy, and you're going to be going through the past and looking how you're kind of trapped there, and you're prevented from living in the present because there's so much going on with what used to happen all the time, or what happened this one really bad day, or I mean, and this is not at all minimized. I mean, this is serious life altering work. But it's really about how can I function in the here and now. Now, I mean, there's lots of therapists with different focuses, and it does change state to state and so on. But that's the definition here: serious mental emotional illness. And coaching is all about, that would be like your minus 100 to zero is therapy. And coaching is all about, hey, I'm starting here. Maybe I'm at zero. Like I'm not happy where I am, but I want to get all the way up to 100. And I mean, some people come in and they're at 85 and they want to get to 100. It's like
Mhm.
they're a college level athlete and they want to get to the Olympics. And well, in my world, it's business people who are, say at a director level and they want to get into the C-suite, things like that. So, and it kind of means something big has to change, and it doesn't necessarily mean like life altering, but I've got to be a different person to actually have people follow me authentically, not because I can hit them over the head with a stick, but because they believe in the words that I'm saying. My words, my actions, and my presence are all lined up. And that's kind of the world of coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you said it doesn't matter if you're at 0 or 85. Everybody at some point wants to get to 100, but
Yep.
getting there is half the battle. And I believe that showing up is part of that. And sometimes we don't know how to show up. And I think that coaches help us to learn how to be in the moment to show up. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, and I think that's where we've probably got a lot of crossover. You and I haven't had a chance to really talk this through, but mindfulness is one of those things that it's gone mainstream now, and I know you're all about mindfulness. And that is really, how do we be here now? How do we start with the breath? What's our posture like? Uh, do we feel safe? So are our thoughts racing and out of control? Are we anxious, or do we feel really safe, really present, and I can think clearly and speak the words that come to me as they come? And getting better at that is what we call mindfulness. There's a
You
lot
know,
of kind of
I'm
techniques to that.
sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just want to get this in here. You said something that I don't think I've ever used in the whole time I've practiced or coached mindfulness. But you said safe.
Yeah,
And that's a very important word, feeling
yeah,
safe. And a lot of times I don't think that people understand that that fear is not feeling safe in a space that they're in when they're going into an interview or when they're meeting with someone on a different level. What do they feel? And is it really fear, or is it the safety part of it that makes them have that fear, feeling uncomfortable? That's feeling unsafe.
yeah. And what that feeling means to you. I mean, you're just talking about some sensations in the body.
Hmm.
Right. So we're outside our comfort zone. And I mean, depending if it's going for a new job interview, we haven't worked in a while, our old kind of career path is gone, we might feel very insecure. So, how do we help ourselves? And as humans, we actually need other people. We have all this kind of mythology around, well, particularly, I'm a man, I got this, I'm going to do it myself, right? Let's just put that one right on the table right off the bat, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The reality is our brains are wired to co-regulate. So we actually need people, and anybody who's ever had a child, I mean, mine's 7 now and you're on to grandkids and similar age ones, they need other people in order to help them grow and to be functional. That doesn't stop because we hit age 16 or age 21 or we get, a driver's license. We still need other people.
Absolutely.
And we need good people so that we can internalize that feeling of safe even when there's pressure,
Yeah.
right? Because our fears can run things for us. And we don't really want that. We want our fears to say, hey, there's some danger out there. And then us as adult people say, I wonder how bad this danger is. And it's like, oh, that's the 73rd email I've gotten today. Not one of them's been dangerous, yes, but yeah, they all surprise me. And it's only 11
Yeah.
a.m. But nobody's going to die from any of these emails, They're
Oh
stressing.
my goodness. You know what? That is so funny. It's funny because I had to preach this Sunday, and I usually try to meditate, and then I hear from God, and I'm like, okay, once He gives me the word, I'll be sure I know, because it's different things that happen. That Yeah, Saturday night came and nothing, and I was like, what is going on here? Okay, have I been disobedient this week? What have I been doing? I'm like going through all these things trying to figure out why God hasn't given me this word yet. And then I got a phone call from a friend. And it was so rare that she calls me in a humdrum situation, but I knew that this call was coming because she lost her husband, and this is the month that she lost him in, and it's his birthday month as well.
Yep.
And so I knew that every day that we talk, at some point this day was coming. But for some reason I wasn't expecting this day. It was just like any other day. I answered the phone like, hey, hello, how you doing, whatever. And then I heard her weeping, and immediately I was just like, oh no, this is the day she needs me. And I'm just like, everything that I was trying to figure out and get this sermon together and all that, it went out the window. But when I heard that, it was like the song came to my head, and I go to my husband and I'm like, start singing this song to her. And that was the sermon. I know. In times like these, we needed a savior. And so I started to pray with her, and I just started to resonate and understand that I was getting all worked up about nothing, and here we've got other things going on in this world that's bigger than what I'm concerned about at this point, because God always gives me a word when he's ready for me to speak. He'll give it to me. But instead, I'm trying to get this thing going, and I want. And so that night I was still like, okay, I've got a title now. Where do I go from here? And then that next Sunday morning I woke up and I got on the computer, and he gave me a few words. I typed them. I got off the computer, printed them out, and I went to church. And I was like, we'll see if the Holy Spirit shows up today. And at that point, when I go to church, I am safe and I feel comfortable in that place. But I wasn't worried about what was going to happen or what was to come. But then certain things started to happen that let me know that you're in the right place. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And sometimes we have to be able to encourage ourselves. And in order to get to that safe place, to let others come in, because now I've got to stand in front of a group of people, right? And allow
Yep.
them into this space. You know, it's sometimes hard for people that don't know how to do that, that don't know how to pull themselves out of that place, that don't know how to wait. How do you speak to that when you are talking to others? And especially, like you said, you come from a Catholic background, you have people that are Christians that say, hey, does this resonate with me? How do you speak to those people? Because we're believers, right? But we
Yeah.
still have these troubles in knowing that it's going to be okay.
But here's the real thing. We have these feelings, say, of unsafe. And we may not know, and it may take us as humans a very, very long time to understand some of our hardships. Whether you call them trials or tests or, random acts of God. I mean, have you ever noticed that things that we call acts of God are not at all things that we want? I mean, like, a tornado rips through and ruins a whole town. We call that act of God, right?
Yeah, like what?
And, they're most ungodly. So, as a human, like, how do we actually still know, even in those times, that we're safe?
Yeah,
And most people, like, I don't feel that. Like, this is when we get to these places, whether you call it a dark night of the soul, or we lose faith, or we lose our way, and we're kind of ripped away from that deep feeling that I am held in the palm of God's hand. This is when, you know, we need other people for a while to walk with us, even if we're going the wrong way, until we get straightened back out.
yeah,
And I mean, it doesn't have to be crazy big things like disasters. It can be the loss of a loved one. Like your friend lost her husband and she's not the same.
yeah,
So I listen to people's stories. This has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. This is what we need. We need to tell our story. We need to hear somebody else's story. And if at all possible, if we have a community, an extended family, I mean, it's less and less these days, unless we kind of really get active. We need to have that story kind of pinned in place as to where I fit in this kind of
yeah,
mosaic of community that I'm creating.
yeah. When you hear someone's story, oftentimes I know me in coaching and ministry, when I think I'm helping someone, again, like my friend Colin, they
Yeah.
end up helping me
Well,
because
you
as
have a
I'm
few minutes to do
listening to them and trying to help them, it
that.
actually inspires me that wow, this person is going through something and they trust me enough to allow me into that place with them. But now I'm learning something and I'm getting it's a humbling situation. And
It's
we
incredible.
need to hear those stories because it we can't I used to believe that I would always everything's gonna be okay. It's just because I believe in God and everything's
Yeah.
gonna be okay. But you know what? I hadn't been through anything.
Right.
And that's why everything was always okay. And then here I go saying, okay, God, I really am ready. Use me. But he
Uh,
can't use someone that has nothing to offer. All I had was good cheer and everything was gonna be okay. And who want you know what? Get I don't want to see your happy smiling face because you don't know anything. You've never been through anything. You can't tell me anything. All you know is you're happy. And life's not always happy. But yes, it is until it wasn't.
uh-huh.
And then I realized, ooh, now I know what real happy is. See, I
Yep.
was cheerful before, but until I had been through some things, and I was like, I was
Oh,
well
yeah.
into my 30s when this thing struck me. And I was just like, well, what just happened? Oh, well, you wanted to be used. In order for you to be used, you've got to be able to have something to give.
Yep. And I've lost something, right?
Yeah.
Scars,
And the
scars,
cheer
everything.
that you're giving isn't a cheer of hope because you haven't come out of anything to say this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
Right? Oh boy, has that changed. So it's important, and I try to be transparent, and I try to tell people, and it's so funny because people still think that I'm that same cheery person, which I am, but
Yeah.
it's different cheery person now. And people still don't think I've been through anything because I'm just like, no. But I'm glad I did learn that. I learned that you can bounce back and we can be resilient. But everybody doesn't know that. And everybody's not at that place and ready to be met at a place of you're up here and they're down here and you're trying to pull them up.
Hmm.
They're not going to come that easily. It doesn't work that
Yeah, and I mean, being fortunate enough to be in the position I've got one of the best jobs on the planet, actually, because people come in and they say, "I'm ready," or "I want to be ready," at least. Like the fact that they've I still say come in, but it's COVID times. It's like they pick up the phone or they send me a Calendly link or something. It's like one
Yeah.
or the other. And we just get on Zoom or one of these other things. They've actually kind of said most things are right, couple things are wrong, and I have no idea how to get to that next level. And what's interesting, and it's kind of happening here in this conversation, which is pretty cool over a podcast, and we don't even know each other. But with that story you told me, you're working on like a mind problem, and in a sense, you're looking for spiritual inspiration too if you're putting together a sermon. And someone calls you, you opened your heart, and that's what turned the key to everything else coming together. You actually opened your heart and had a human connection with this person. And what I'm so grateful for is that I get to do that. I get to open my heart, really hear somebody for where they're at. And I mean, they just might want a promotion. Like sometimes it's tougher things, but like sometimes it's that. It's like, who is this person who's really stuck? Who's looking for happiness, who can't get there? They've got frustration, they've got jealousy, they've got coworkers out to get them. I mean, all those normal things, right? How come they got the promotion? Oh,
Yeah.
I know why, because of this, 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 and this. And I mean, and there's real issues in our world that we still need to get busy fixing, and I hope fast. But when you really listen to someone, which is what I get to do, this kind of magical thing happens where anything becomes possible. That person starts to notice that, oh, I was put on this planet for a reason. There is something that I am born to do. I have a personal mission and I'm going to get busy doing it. And then you can see, week after week, as they progress, they're doing things they never would have dared to do before.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's so inspiring when you see that take place. I get excited when I see other people prospering and doing well, and I'm like,
Yep.
yes. Yay!" My only hope for you is to succeed. I'm just like, I just want to see you do well. And I used to get in trouble because I wanted more for you than you wanted for yourself, and now I'm being too much for you. And it's like, why don't you see what I see for you? Why don't you know? And that's
Yeah.
again because they're not at that place yet. And that's
Yep.
where the listening comes in. That's when the understanding of needs come in. It's not what I want for you, it's what you need to be able to get to that place.
Yep.
And we talk about active listening and how to really hear what's not being said through nonverbal gestures and things that people are doing, because you can show up and you can look like you're there,
Hmm.
but truthfully, what's not being seen and what's not being heard is those emotions that's going on the inside, that people don't know what's really happening. And you're trying to play this part, and you're trying to act like you're okay that you didn't get that promotion, but truthfully you're on the inside like, and
Yeah.
but you're not being 100% because you're not allowing yourself to process that, and you're just like, well, I didn't get it, and it's probably because of this or because of that, but you're trying to rationalize it, but we're not
Hmm.
really processing what is going on. And I wanted to share this because someone has said something to me, and it just made so much sense that your feelings are valid. You can feel that,
Yep.
feel it, and they're valid, but your thoughts are not always valid. And so what you think about those feelings may not necessarily be true. And sometimes that's how we get ourselves in certain situations, because we feel a way, but then we think something more into that instead of saying, okay, what am I really feeling here versus what my thoughts are about what I'm feeling.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, that's how we kind of transition out of being a victim to the circumstances of our life.
Mm,
And if you think about those thoughts that are most often invalid, it's casting us into the role of a victim. So I have these things have happened to me. I've got valid feelings about them, But then I make this big story about that's the way it's always been. That's the way it's always going to be. It's because this happened to me, back in 1976. And then ever since then, my whole life has been like this. And it's
Yes.
not fair, right? And we create this big kind of worn out story. And if you heard a friend saying a story, oh, please just stop with that. Like that's
How many times have I heard that?
yeah. But we let them go on in our own heads. And I mean, that's where a big piece of coaching comes in. It's like we can actually stop that worn out story and start not just telling ourselves one on a mind level, but walking around in the world. So, when we've got one of those victim stories, we may be walking around, like you can see me using my chest slumped down, my head's
Mhm.
kind of looking at, 1 inch in front of the ground before me, my shoulders hunched over, and I
Yes.
can spend the rest of my life walking around that way and believing. Or I can say, okay, these feelings of being beaten up and downtrodden are valid, but I'm still alive. I did wake up this morning. I got myself out of bed. And everything else from here on is a choice.
Yeah.
And I've got to see what reality gives back to me, because if we've been playing a victim or a doormat for a lot of years, we're going to have a lot of people around us that think, that's your job and you're supposed to do that. So don't go change on
Absolutely.
me.
Absolutely. I love that you say that because I laugh. Me and my mom, I laugh at her sometimes because she lives with us. We all live together, and it's a great combination.
Yeah.
But it hasn't always been, and it's because our values were totally different. Our core values, even though this is my mother that raised me, we have totally different core values and beliefs because of how we were raised. And
Yeah.
so now she comes into the household where me and my husband are liberating these children and allowing them to have opinions and giving them snacks when they shouldn't be getting, just different things. And I told her, I said, I told you when I was a kid, I was going to have fun food in my house.
Right.
And I said, but you think that I'm a bad parent because I'm not fixing my kids these heart and soul meals that you were raised on. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Mom, times have changed. Things are different. And then she would tell these stories about, oh, well, I remember it was four of us and we only had to do this. And I'm like, and sometimes I would buy into it. And then one day I said, Mom, thank God that we don't have to do that anymore. And it was so funny because one day it's like something just clicked and she looked at me and she's like, you know what? You're right. And I go, yeah, we don't have to walk to school. We can take our kids. We have a choice. We can put them on the bus or they
Yeah.
can go to school in the car. Or now, guess what? They do virtual online school. So they don't have to have a certain bedtime. They just have to do what they need to do to get their work done. And I'm like, Mom, things are totally different. We're not living in that day anymore. Things have changed. And I need you to come up here and see. Because she was like, so, well, you've got to raise your kids a certain way. You got to. And I'm like, okay, let me just show you this. I promise we're doing biblical things as we're doing this, but
Yeah.
we're just not doing it how it used to be done. And I'm glad because she's like, your children are spoiled. And I'm like, yay, I'm glad. And at first I felt bad to have these spoiled, bratty kids. But then I go, they make good grades. They're really good kids. They don't get into trouble. They have mouths because we liberated them to talk and speak and have an opinion. But other than that, I'm like, we're raising some really good, solid kids. So other than that, you know, it's not what it used to be. They don't have to live like that. And I'm not going to make them live like that. I'm not going to tell them these things because hopefully we're making things better. And as it gets better and better and better, their children will never have to know what it is to lack or to do without or to be without. But if we teach this scarcity mind frame and if we teach this lack mind frame and what I want my kids to work hard. I want them to know what it is to earn a dollar. But you know what? We don't have to work the way we used to work. There's easier way. We've got technology now. you, you know, there's no
That's
reason you're making bad grades. You better Google it.
I know. And they got them right in the classrooms. There's like iPads sitting in the classes now and stuff. And
Yeah, there's no reason for us to not be learning and being educated, right?
yeah, but it is such a huge thing, because like that conversation with your mom, and I know I have them about my daughter, and it's like, are we doing this right? And the bottom line is, like things like discipline, they are a reflection of us loving our children, us wanting the best for them. Now, I know other people out there maybe have struggles and are not coming from a loving place, and there is a reality to that. But the way we're talking right here and right now, and I'm assuming, most of your listeners are, again, either there or trying to get there. And we're all doing our best on a daily basis, and we have slip ups and so on. But how we raise our children is an expression of love. And we do have things like technology, and we just have to sort out, like, I'm missing that extended family. I'm missing that community. I mean, I've got, people in their 20s used to come to me and say, I can't meet anybody to fall in love with. And it's like, well, we used to have the church picnic, and you used to know everybody in the community, and just two of you would sort it out. And
Yeah.
sometimes, you have to try a couple of times, and that's missing. But we've got everything that tech does bring. So we do have to kind of figure out what's the balance between some things like education being so easy, so accessible. My daughter, she's doing like intro to coding. Like, I remember punch cards when my mom went back to college, and she had punch cards doing computers. My daughter, who's 7, is doing
Yes.
coding. I lived through the middle of between here and there, and
Yeah.
it blows my mind what these kids are gonna be able to do. But I bump into it, it's like, wow, she just spoke back to me. Like, that would have been a game changer if I did that at home. Let me tell you, there would have been tears when I was growing up.
I'd go get my head from across the street and bring it back when I got permission to go get it.
Some old school stuff, right?
Wait, what? Yeah. I go, we'll laugh about this one day. Today, not so funny, right? My husband always says that. He said, no matter how much together you think you have it, your kids will always expose you for who you are. They'll
Oh, yeah.
they'll tell on you. What is going on? And people say, oh, your kids always look so well together. I'm like, yeah, they've been threatened. And it still doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because my 7-year-old, oh, she loves to get in, she loves to entertain people.
Yeah.
Oh, she loves it. She loves to just like, oh, mommy's off guard now. Let me go get her. Let me go in for it. And that's what I have to realize, that who's in control here, right?
Yeah.
Who's in,
I mean,
and
we
that's the
love
thing,
control.
because we can be tested on many sides, and then we have to remember and come back and like, oh, okay, this too
Yeah.
shall pass.
Absolutely. I mean, we really love control, that kind of thing of fear and safety. We think, if I can just get my plan, everything goes to plan, then I'm in control, everything's good. And that's a joke. I
Have
mean,
children. You are no longer in control.
no longer in control.
That is so funny. So I want to talk about your book. Let's talk about your book and how it came to be, and what inspired you to get together and make this happen.
It's kind of a funny thing. I've always sort of wanted to write a book. And then I did set out, it's like, oh, I'm going to write this book, and it's going to be, some business steps, and people are just going to come to me and all these things. And when I sat down to write it, and I actually used a ghostwriter and an editor, and we just did these conversations, recorded them. There's a transcript, and then Linda went through it and edited and came back to me. And then they went and asked some hard questions. They're like, well, what happened here? And what happened there? And what happened then? It's like, no, no, I've edited all that out. I'm telling you the nice, clean, sanitized version.
Nobody wants to hear that.
Nobody wants to hear that, And so it's one of those things that this book took on a life of its own. And it kind of forced me into telling the truth, into being honest. And then it actually became transformational. So, I mean, I'd been a therapist for 2 decades, and what I didn't realize is I was kind of coasting. I wasn't growing. I wasn't out there sharing the message, and I wasn't touching enough lives. And I didn't have like this ego need of I need to be famous. So it kind of came at me this other way. When I started to tell my book, it's like, uh-oh, I'm not really living up to my full potential. I'm supposed to be doing something, and I'm kind of being shy and hiding. And what really kind of started to happen as this book took shape is they said, okay, one of these questions, like, well, what happened then? Well, when I was 16, I've got a minute, I can tell the short version of this story.
Go for it.
Yeah, when I was 16, I had an uncle, and he was very kind of influential in our family. He was, basically an activist in Northern Ireland in Belfast. My mother was born and raised there. I'm Irish on my dad's side as well. And he, was at a funeral, 1988, and people can look this up on Wiki. I'd rather you read the version that's in my book because it's actually much more accurate, but there is a Wikipedia version. You can look up the Milltown Massacre, you can look up the corporal killings. But what happened? My uncle was at a funeral, and a terrorist attacked the funeral with grenades and guns. He ran towards this guy and was shot and killed. The person was later captured, taken away. But I mean, that was world news. My mom, of course, is devastated, starts looking, into flights. We get, as quick as we could, the four of it, my brother, my father, mom, myself. Um, we go over there at my uncle's funeral. I was a reader, so there was a lot of fear of reprisals. So this is, um, basically, Republicans and loyalists sometimes get said Protestant Catholic, but it wasn't really about God in any way, shape, or form. So a lot of my family was in fear of being attacked again or being singled out, being captured as, hey, here's this guy who's speaking at an IRA funeral, because it turns out what was made public is my uncle was a member of the IRA, although not on active service. So it all comes out. Now, we all had pretty good ideas. He was active. I mean, he was active. He was involved in helping people um, just get basic rights. Like, men at that time in West Belfast, 80% of men were unemployed, because if you're a man and you're Catholic, you can't have a job unless you
Mhm.
figure it out and make one yourself some way, somehow. So he was fighting against that kind of culture and that still leftover colonialism. At his funeral, a car drives in at speed. Two soldiers were in that, and crowds surrounded them, pulled them out, beat them. When they searched them, they found out that they were British soldiers, and they were shot and executed right there on the spot. I'm 16 years old from suburban Canada. I mean, I was smiling, I was happy, just like I was cheerful. We were from a pretty average family, like there was some chaos and some hard times, but I had both parents, most of the time they had jobs. My dad lost some jobs and stuff, but I was not prepared, and nor was anybody else. And then a few days later, we got back on the plane, came back to Canada, and we read all these headlines about crazed Irish mob kills two innocents, and this, and so I was devastated. And then I was met with a society that just flat out did not understand what had happened, but there was being told a political agenda. And I was on an out group, and I don't think I ever realized what that meant. And I mean, it took me years to kind of start to reconcile. It's like, oh, this society isn't for me.
Mhm.
I actually have to kind of deal with that. And I may not bump into it every day, but every now and again there's reminders. So, I mean, that's pretty heavy story, and there's not really enough kind of space and air. And by all means, like, have a look at my book, and
Yes.
uh, you know there's videos and footage and so on, but it changed me. So I went through, what we would call these days PTSD. It hadn't been
Yeah.
invented back in 1988. So it's like, oh, Mike's messed up for some reason. He used to be a good student. Now he's got some zeros, like,
Yeah, like nobody knows. You didn't just go through something. You have an experience, because I can only imagine the devastation of thinking, what if something happens while we're here at
Well, I
that
had
point?
that feeling every day of my life for the longest time after.
Yeah.
Right. So I was in,
Even after you're back home safe, you still are feeling that there could be an invasion, something
yep.
that you never even knew existed or could exist in your life now has the place there.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of what got me in the world of searching out mythologies, searching out, kind of incidents that were transformational for people. So Joseph Campbell, I did have some background with Star Wars, and so some of those things became important to me again. What happened to Luke when his mother, and I mean, his aunt and uncle, because they got shot, they got killed, and then he started to find the Force, and it's like, oh, there's like a something I'm supposed to do. I don't see it at all. Obi-Wan wasn't there for me, but I did need to start going and looking for guides, right? And funnily
Mm,
enough, we're 35 years later, basically, and here I am in that guide role now. Like there can be things that are just so devastating you cannot make sense of them this lifetime, and you need to find a way to carry on anyway.
hmm,
I went through panic attacks. I went through depression. I went through, complete kind of change in life course. I wanted to go into science and stuff, and I ended up kind of really lost, and then kind of heading towards psychology, religion, um, all these soft skills. Me at 16, you wouldn't say, "Oh, there's a kid who's got for empathy." It's like, no, he was into sports and athletics. It was that kind of thing. It was only that massive pain that taught me, oh, like sometimes life is hard. And that was, the end result of that gift is I have empathy
yeah.
because I suffered.
And in our suffering, truth comes.
Yeah.
And I think that we don't understand when we suffer, that's when we become real. And I'm not saying that, oh, it's good to suffer, because it's not good to suffer, but it was good for someone to suffer, or we wouldn't be here, right? So
That's
suffering
true.
has some goodness to it, but you have to endure that, and you have to grow from it. And
Yeah.
so before, I always say, I don't know what I don't know. I just go along and I make things up as I go along. But when I come to something that I'm totally stumped, now it's a revelation. That's when the transformation happens. Because
Yeah.
now I'm made aware of something that didn't formerly exist, but always has. But now it exists in my life and in my world. And now it's changed me, or someone has been changed by or impacted by an encounter that they never knew existed until it did. And
Yeah.
and at 16 years old, that's heavy stuff. And now you're just this kid going to school and being a teenager and doing what teenagers do, but now you've been faced with an adult experience,
Yeah.
and you haven't experienced being an adult. So how do you know, and only for someone to tell you that it'll be okay, or you'll get over it, or something's wrong with you, or why are you acting like that, without understanding the core facts of how that is affecting you. And so again, the feeling is valid, but the thoughts now, because of what people are saying towards those feelings that you have,
Yeah.
makes it a whole nother monster, right?
And that's the thing with trauma, is someone, I mean, I was very fortunate. I had kindness of teachers and kindness of people around me. I don't know how much it helped, but it's like there were kind of good people around, and I'm very grateful for that. But when someone would say something like, it'll be okay, or that happened for a reason, I mean, I was enraged. It's like, it's not okay. It's the farthest thing from okay. You know, this isn't gonna just work out. Like I got a dead relative, and I don't know which way is up in my life, right?
Yeah,
And I mean, my parents and my extended family, my brother, like it affected all of us differently, but everybody's lives were permanently altered from that day forward. And yeah, years later, people found their way, and they did have to process, and they did have to endure, and some kind of did some combination of burying that. And keep in mind, way back then, it was effectively an active war situation. So it was not safe to come out and say, "Oh yeah, I'm the guy, and that was my brother-in-law." Like, no, you had to, if you had a job, you had to go and go and teach or go over to the factory and put things together. Like it was serious business to keep your mouth shut and not be noticed by the wrong people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And now here we are telling stories that
Yep.
once couldn't be told, right?
Yep.
Because I even know, like, with my mom and some of the things, and I'm like, you got to talk about those things. Well, I'd rather not talk about, and sometimes people want to keep those things buried. But once we start talking about these stories and we start realizing that, okay, this is what it is, and this is how I deal with this. Because if we don't ever deal with it, if we don't ever face it, I say we can run from things, but until we turn around and face it, we can't overcome it, or we can't, get past it, because we're going to continue to run from it, right?
And that's it. And that isn't
Yeah.
processing. That's, that is kind of the body doing its thing. Like we have fight, we have
Yeah.
flight, we have freeze,
Yes.
submit and attach, like that's hardwired into us.
Hmm. It
And we
is.
can't get to the processing until we come out of those, kind of neurological and nervous system responses and actually get the frontal lobes firing again and get our breathing back, and to say, okay, I lived through that. That happened, but I'm here today. That means I can process what happened, and maybe somebody else can benefit from it. Maybe not. Who knows? But I can get it off of my chest.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful for you to reach out to me to share this story, because again, I shared with you, this is one of the reasons why I do what I do. So other people out there may be in a similar situation, may have been going through something, may have something buried and hidden that needs to come to the surface so that they can push forward and live. And that's what this is all about. If we're going to be in this world and we've got to live in this world, we need to be able to live to our fullest and best abilities. And we can't do that if we're suppressing our feelings and our emotions. And a lot of times people don't want you to deal with your emotions. That's what we've been taught, that
Yeah.
you gotta keep that bottled in until you can't. And I believe that we can learn things very easily, but
Oh
it's
yeah.
hard to unlearn things that are not
Those
good for
habits
us.
get ingrained, let me tell you.
Ah, when we figure that one out, we will, you can teach and you can learn, but you cannot teach someone to unlearn overnight. It's a thorough process. And I think that's the thing that I love about mindfulness so much. I couldn't teach it if I didn't practice it. If I
Yeah.
if I didn't have to daily come to the throne and cast myself down, like, you gotta stay grounded and rooted, or you're gonna lose it. And I used to think that I gotta be surrounded by goodness all the time. I cannot be in situations that I'm gonna freak out, I'm gonna lose it, I'm gonna do something crazy, people are gonna think something's wrong with me. So I need to be in the box where I can just be happy and good all the time. Well, you're not going to function very well doing that. You've got to learn how to manage yourself in all situations. And no matter what situation is, learning to be present in that moment and learning to absorb whatever is going on and not take offense to it and not beat yourself up because you can't change it or do anything about it,
Mhm.
but just being able to settle and say, you know what? Okay, I am feeling that. It is what it is, but I'm still breathing. I'm still alive. It is going to be okay, but not because somebody tells me it's going to be okay, but because I know and I can sense it for myself and have that understanding of safety.
And that's kind of really key. And being here on the other side, as it were now, I'm still that same person. I'm, lots of happy, but a foul temper, and so that's like, I'm just not being all that pleasant to be around right now. I got to be mindful of this.
It's not just
No.
me. Like, ah.
So okay, I had to take a breath, go for a walk, go, I don't know, however long it takes, take a week off. Like sometimes
Yeah,
it's in time.
I'm just staying in bed today. I'm just, you really don't want me to be, you really don't want me to be there.
Right. But what's funny is, you know, and I guess this is the benefits of age and wisdom starting to come to me or something like that. Nothing I face, nothing that I run into these days, no matter how bad. And I mean, we've just lived through COVID, or I don't know. Now they're even talking, there's more waves. I don't even want to talk about it, right? But nothing is as bad as that day in 1988. And when I can remember that I was there, I survived, and actually get down into my deep knowing that this is all part of some plan that is way, way beyond my understanding,
Yes.
and start to connect to the deepest part of me that is connected to the divine. Like, that's the gift that I get to pass on now. It's like when someone comes to me and says, "This is horrible," I can say, "Tell me more." And I might not understand what they're going through,
Right.
but for whatever reason, because I've lived through my trial, and the proof is in the pudding, they might say, "How come you're not kind of upset that I just told you about this terrible thing that happened?" It's like, well, terrible things happened to me too, and I got through it. Let's keep walking, let's keep talking. And I think that's the real gift of getting to that other side, and to however you want to recognize God's grace, or whatever you may call that divine presence at your deepest,
Yes.
being carried along the beach, if you want to, that footprints in the sand. Like, there are hard times in life.
Yes. Yes. That
And
is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing with us today. I always believe that wherever you were, you have to ask yourself, are you still there? We're not going to stay in that place. Even if our mind may be in that place physically,
Mhm.
we're not in that place. We're not still that 16-year-old person, but mentally, we could be if we
Yep.
don't understand how to continue to process and work through it. And it's a beautiful thing that you experience that at such an early age, because there's some people that are 90 that haven't learned some of these
Yeah.
things. And I think about the people that are in the Bible. These people live to be like hundreds of years old, and
Hmm.
it's like, could you imagine somebody 600 years old right now talking about they're getting ready to have a baby? Like, people would be like,
Yep.
what is wrong with you? Why would you be doing that? But there was a different time, it was a different mindset, and it was a different value, a different core value and belief system of what could happen and what could be done. And
Yep.
we minimize ourselves and limit ourselves on what we haven't seen or what we haven't yet been through. But when you've experienced something and
Hmm.
you've been able to look back and say, if that's the worst that's happened to me so far, then you know apparently I'm gonna make it. and
Yep.
and just the fact of how you told your story, and how I can feel, it's like I can visualize. I always, like, I'm a visual person, so I'm visualizing you there, and just all of these things going on, and just the intensity of it all. But to
Yeah.
be able now, this is something that you would think that it it's I'm talking to you and this is real life. But this is
Oh
something that
yeah.
you only read in a book that a character has went through, correct? But
Oh
no,
yeah.
this is a real true life experience. But the only way that I would get to know that is if you tell me this story. We have to be able to share so we can show others that, yeah, we've been through some things. But I'm here sharing this experience with you. So I
Yeah.
did make it through. Was it easy? No. Did I suffer? Yeah. But am I better for it? Now,
It's
how
up to
do
me,
we
right?
get that? How do we get to that place?
And that's where we need other people. And ideally we need some kind of faith system as well, but we do need that actual kindness of others, and we need a guide, and we need people to hear our story. I would have considered this like an unspeakable story. And so I know there's people out there that have unspeakable stories that, are maybe way worse than this. I've heard some. I really have. And they can't tell them. The coolest thing about stories, and this is why I went to myths and we go into the Bible, is there are stories of unspeakable horrors, but by somebody else telling the story, we also get a pathway for ourselves, even if we're not at a place where we can share or tell, or it isn't safe to do so.
Absolutely.
And that's what I love about story. It can carry us along until our feet get moving again.
Yes.
I have so
Well,
enjoyed my time here today.
tell everybody how they can get more of this story, where they can get your book, and how they can come to work with you as well.
So easiest way to get the book is to go on to Amazon.com. It's The Myth Guided Mind. Hopefully you'll put the link in there because it's MYTH dash guided,
Yes.
GUIED. Some people hear
It's
misguided,
going to
and
be on, you send me your, yeah,
yeah,
you
yeah,
send me
yeah,
your links and all that's going to be on the website and everybody will be able, I just want you to say it to them now.
yeah.
Anybody's lit.
Yeah, so it's the myth guided, and some people, they tease me and says, misguided, you're that same old character always joking around. It's like, yeah. Myth guided, friends and family, the people outside of that circle seem to respect me. And way most people are finding me, I do have Instagram and Facebook. The way most people are finding me is on LinkedIn. I'll give you that link as well. And I think overall I will have a website together hopefully soon. It was supposed to be done last month. I'm still a work in progress, but that is coming, and it'll be at michaelhines.ca.
Absolutely. All right, Michael, do you have any last words of wisdom that you'd like to leave with the audience before we jump off of here?
I don't think any last words of wisdom, but it's somehow, if I were to say, with this, it's learn some mindfulness, learn to go into your deepest parts of you, and really take that step towards cracking open that seed that is your life you're supposed to blossom into and grow.
Grow. There you have it, people. In this life, we can do many things, but as I think about my little baby that's in there, little grandbaby that is in there, he's 2 months old.
Wow.
And he is growing so rapidly. We just looked at his newborn pictures, and now he's 2 months old. He's 10 pounds. And I took a picture of him. He looks like a year old, but he's not as big as he looks. But all I realize is he's not gonna stay that baby, that size. He's gonna grow. But the
Yeah.
way that he's gonna grow is to be nurtured and to be loved and to
Yeah.
be taught some things. But if he has none of those things, he's still going to grow. But in what way is he
Mhm.
going to grow and develop? And so that helps me to be mindful of what we do around him, what we even say around him, how we treat one another around him, because this is life. And life is to be cherished. But see, the thing is, some of us have already grown, but we're not at our full capacity yet
Yeah.
because we still have room to expand. As long as we have breath in our body, as long as we open our eyes and we can see the day, we can continue to grow. And so, I just want to share with you, as I always do, you were created with a purpose. Go be great. This is your life. Live it and live it in abundance. But if you need help doing that, there's people out there. Michael is one of them. Reach out, find out ways that you can connect, that you can learn how to grow on another level. Or you can come and check out the Mindful Coach. I teach mindfulness. I've got a breath session class going on right now. Learning how to breathe will change your life. And often we don't even know that we're doing it wrong, but when you learn how to do it right, opens a whole new door for you. So
True.
it just does. It helps you to relax. It helps you to maintain. And just knowing that you can take a deep breath before you punch somebody in the face can make all the difference in the world. And you won't have to pay for that. You won't have to maybe go to jail for punching somebody in the face. You don't have to apologize for punching somebody in the face, but you can take a deep breath and you can turn the situation around. You can walk away and you can maintain your sanity because this is your life and you have the choices to make. So, thank you for joining us today on Mindful Intentions Nurture and Drive Your Business. So, have a great day. It's Monday. Do whatever you can do so that you can grow into your best self. Now, go mind your business. Thank you. Thanks, Michael, for joining
So
me.
much.
Stick around while I get us off of here. And I appreciate you being on today. God bless you.
God bless you too.
All right.